This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah.
Ali, actually, Shardul and Mohit have not joined. Abhishek, can you text them or
Yeah.
call them maybe? With them, they might be thinking we have training at 11:30. Actually, Ali, we connected at 11, but
Right.
so was that training to start today
So
at
let it.
11 or 11:30?
Yeah, it's normal 11 o'clock, right? It was only for a couple of days when we joined for when we
Okay.
connected at 11:30, right? Just during my
Yeah, but
training.
but we
Right?
connected today at 11 and there was no training. I mean, it was just showing
No,
waiting for organizer.
right. That's what I'm saying. So I also connected at 11 too, but then I connected
Acha.
with a different link. So that's why.
Oh, okay, okay,
Okay.
okay. Mhm. Abhishek, you
Uh,
there? Hello, Abhishek. Hello. Uh, Ali, can Abhishek? Hello.
mhm.
Maybe just give us 2 minutes.
Sure, no
I'll
problem.
ping
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Okay. Ask us Shardul Mohit to connect. Okay. Ali, let's start. Abhishek has texted both Shardul and Mohit, so they should be joining in a minute. So, but we can start. I think Mohit has joined. Yeah, so we can start, Ali.
All right. Just give me a second and let me open my notes. Uh, okay, so compensation basis, right? Uh, Now we discussed what is a compensation basis, or at least some aspects of compensation basis, right? In the sense that we saw or used compensation basis while we discussed a few of our plans. Okay, now what is a compensation basis? As I mentioned, or probably we have not looked at this aspect of compensation basis. So compensation basis allows you to create different definitions of estimated earnings for multiple populations ac- across. Hey guys, I was also supposed to send you the assignment, couldn't do that. I was very busy over the weekend just with some household work. I'll do that today.
That
Okay.
that is fine, Ali. Actually, we are very busy. Next couple of
Okay.
days we have PI whole day PI planning. So, but Friday we have a free day, so we can look into that
Okay.
on Friday. So take your time. No,
Sure,
no
sure,
worries.
sure, sure. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, now when I look at Steve Morgan's profile once again, right, and if I look at those three totals, now what is the purpose of those totals, right? What is total base pay, or what is total salary and allowances, or what is total compensation? This is, or these totals which Workday is showing, they are nothing but uh, a sum of the estimated earnings of the employee, right? So it says the estimated total base pay of the employee or Steve Morgan is some 317,000 US dollars. Similarly, the estimated sum of his salary and allowances is some XYZ, and the estimated total compensation that he would receive, right? And this is not just his salary and fixed allowances or variable allowances, but also what is the variable bonus that he's expected to receive, right? Or the target bonus he's expected to receive. What is the target merit increase he's expected to receive? Are there any stock assignments that have been done? Right. Again, why are these estimated? Because the net amount that he receives would depend on a lot of factors. Obviously his tax, he puts in any overtime, his leave of absence, and all those factors. So these totals which are shown on an employee profile, they allow you to show the estimated earnings of your employees. Maybe you can define different totals for, guys, give me a second, let me close. Okay, so they allow us to group different employees, right? Maybe based on the location. For example, the estimated total earning of all India employees is represented in terms of cost to company, right? So this is a compensation basis which has been created based on the location of the employees being India, and it shows the total cost to company of the workers, right? It could be based on, let's say, the employee type. For example, all sales employees, they have their commission component, and for usually for these kind of employees, you have something called on target earnings, right? So this is your target earnings, considering your commissions, considering your, let's say, your cell phone allowance, right? You being a sales employee, and considering other allowances specific to you, right? So different employee types, based on employee location, you can create different compensation bases, which allows you to show the estimated total earnings of those employees. Okay, now what Workday has done is it has given us three standard compensation bases, right? Oh, okay, so there are three Workday delivered compensation basis. And what are these? The first one is total base pay. Then you have total. So this is something we see on Steve Morgan's profile, right? The second one is total salary and allowances. Again, something we discussed yesterday or on Friday. And the third one, as I mentioned, is something which we'll talk about when we look at uh, the advanced comp, and it is called eligible earnings override. Not as important as the other two compensation bases, not as widely used as the other two compensation bases, but then many advanced comp projects, they use eligible earnings override. Okay, so what is total base pay? Again, we have seen this, right? So it is basically the sum of any compensation components linked to compensation elements, right? When I say any compensation components, I mean, let's call it some of any compensation plans which are linked to compensation elements listed in the base pay elements field of the employees compensation grade or grade profile, right? So what is total base pay? It is basically a sum of all those compensation plans which are linked to that compensation elements which are listed or defined on the compensation grade profile as the base pay elements, right? What is total salary and allowances? Again, very self-explanatory. Sum of all salary and allowance plans assigned to a position, right? What it means is if an employee is working on multiple positions, his total salary and allowances would show up separately for each of those positions, right? And what is eligible earnings override? Let's give me a second. Uh, Let me just introduce eligible earnings override. We'll actually look at the scenario when we are talking about advanced compensation, right? Okay, so this is basically a field or a total which provides customers the ability to define a currency amount at the employee level that can be used as the basis for bonus calculations. Now, what do we mean by this? Uh, Now, when we created our salary plans and allowance plans, we had this option called exclude from merit, right? So by default, when you generate your merit review process, when you start your bonus calculation process, excuse me, system would consider all these plans, and then whatever bonus increase you get, whatever merit increase you get, is based on the sum of your salaries and allowances, right? But then there could be certain scenarios wherein you would want to override this eligible earnings based on which your bonus calculation is done, right? So again, I have 10,000 salary and I have two or three other allowances which together forms 20,000. Now this is my eligible earning based on which I'm getting 10% bonus or 20% bonus or whatever bonus has been decided to it. But then for whatever reasons, and this is especially true for your commission employees, I may want to override this eligible earnings based on which system would calculate my bonus value, that 10%, right? And this is done through this basis. So ultimately it is a total which is being loaded, right? This is not something which Workday has calculated. Workday has already done a calculation, but then I want to override those eligible earnings for the purpose of calculating bonus for one or more than one employees, right? There are tasks available for it, but then if I have to do it for multiple employees, I can do that using EIBs, right? So these are the three delivered compensation basis. Two of these we have looked at detail. The third one, as I mentioned, we'll talk about later. Now, as I mentioned, you could be creating these earnings for multiple reasons, uh, right? For example, I have total cost to company, right? Which is for my India employees, right? And this could be a sum of your salary, sum of all your allowances, sum of all your bonuses, sum of your pensions. In my case, it is also a sum of my medical premiums, which my organization pays, right, for my medical insurance. So this is basically a sum of. We'll talk about total cost to company in much more detail. It is a full-fledged chapter, and we'll look at this case on target earnings, right? And usually used for your sales employees in US and other countries, right? And then total compensation that we saw, or total cash, right? That we saw on Steve Morgan's profile. So usually used for your non-commission employees in US, UK, and other countries. Uh, okay, now Workday has delivered these compensation bases, right? But then, as we saw with total compensation of Steve Morgan, and when we looked at, hey guys, I'm very sorry for the background. I'm working from home. All the kids are home. Uh, okay. Now, if I go back to our view compensation basis details, right? Okay. And if I look at this total compensation, as I mentioned, this is a custom basis, right? And it includes bonus plan, right? Now, why is this? It includes the bonus plan because that's how this compensation basis has been created. And all these custom compensation bases are called configurable compensation basis, right? And we'll see next how you create your configurable compensation basis, or as I mentioned, they are a type of your custom compensation basis, right? Okay, there are basically 4 steps and we'll talk about all those 4 steps in detail. Okay, the first one is your task, which is create configurable compensation basis. So this is where you create your compensation basis. The next one, while you create your compensation basis, you select the compensation plans to be included in the compensation basis. So why is base pay being included to calculate total compensation? Because all these plan types, your allowance, your bonus, your salary, have been included for your total compensation calculation, and we'll see how that is done, right? So you create your configurable compensation basis, you select the plans to be included for calculating the total for that compensation basis, right? Okay, you can uh, make adjustments using your task maintain compensation basis. We'll also look at why this task is used for. And then finally, uh, there's a report which is called employees missing a compensation basis, right? And this report is used to determine if there are employees without an eligible compensation basis. Okay, so let's look at, I'll not create a new compensation basis. I'll just show you those tasks and then we'll look at the structure of total compensation, right? Okay, so my first task is create configurable compensation basis, right? So this is my task and I would give a name to my compensation basis, right? I would select the eligibility rule. Now, this is what determines to which employee a compensation basis is applicable for, right? So again, the total cost to company compensation basis, this is eligible for all employees in India, right? The on target earnings compensation basis, this is eligible for all the sales employees, right? Okay, the next thing, you select your functional area, right? Again, we'll talk about the different functional areas available. By default, the functional area that you'll select is compensation, but then you can also select other functional areas, right? And we'll just look at them as well. And then if you look here, this is where I define which plan types would be included for calculating the total for that compensation basis, right? So if I open Okay, so if I open total compensation, okay, now what does total compensation include? If you see, it includes the salary plan, and here it says any salary plan which is assigned to the employee, right? If that employee is eligible for this compensation basis, include the value of that salary plan into this compensation basis, right? What I could have also done is, no, I don't need all salary plans, only select only if an employee has, let's say, this salary plan, then only the value of this salary plan should be included to calculate the value of this compensation basis I'm creating, right? So I can include all salary plans or only selective salary plans. Now, if an employee has a different salary plan, now that total will not be included in the compensation basis, right? Okay, we'll make changes to this compensation basis and we'll see how it impacts. The next one is only include those salary plans which are associated with the base pay element. Now again, how does system identify the base pay element? It checks the compensation grade profile of the employee, checks which compensation element is assigned there, and then checks if the salary plan of the employee has the same element. If it does, then system would include the value of that salary plan, right, into the total for this compensation basis, right? Or I can say, no, I don't want to include any salary plan for calculating this compensation basis. And the same is holds true for your period salary plans and your allowance plans as well. Now, if you see, only your period salary plans and allowance plans can be associated or define the base pay of the employee. So that is why only for here you have the option all. You can select specific plans, right? Or you can say, no, I don't want those plans. The fourth option is base pay only. So again, only those allowance plans which are associated with a compensation element which is identified as the base pay for that employee based on grade profile, only those plans would be included, right? But then if you see, for any other plan types, your bonus plans, your stock plans, your commission plans, there's no option called base pay only, because no other plans can be created to or defined as the base pay of the employee. Okay, now if I look at this basis, it includes all salary plans, it includes all allowance plans, it includes all bonus plans, right? And that is why I have the salary plan, allowance plans, and bonus plans of the employee included to form the value of this total compensation, right? Now we'll talk about a few other aspects. If you look at this here, you see something called a ranking, right? Now what is this ranking? Well, and if you look at the standard basis, there's no ranking that is defined, right? Okay, first talk about the details of some of the fields that we have already looked at, right? Eligibility rule, pretty straightforward. We have already we understand what is the eligibility rule, right? Okay, now in the context of eligibility rule, we'll also talk about the ranking. Now, what happens if an employee, okay, let's look at an employee called sales employee, right? Now, for sales employees, whether they belong to US or UK or India, I'm saying they are eligible for this compensation basis called total on target earnings, right? For my India employees, I'm saying they are eligible for total cost to company, right? Okay, now uh, let's so an India employee, he gets assigned this compensation basis. A sales employee, he gets assigned this compensation basis, right? But let's look at an employee. So let's say there is an India sales employee or pre-sales employee or commission or whatever employee. Now, based on his eligibility criteria, he is eligible for both total cost to company as well as total on target earnings, right? Because he is eligible based on the eligibility criteria based on both these compensation basis. Now, how would now the other factor is the compensation of an employee can only be represented in terms of one compensation basis or one configurable compensation basis, which is called his primary compensation basis, right? So even if Steve Morgan would have been eligible for more than one compensation basis, system can only represent his estimated earnings in terms of one primary compensation basis. This obviously apart from total salary and allowances and total base pay, right? These two are standard. Now, how would system, because my employee is eligible for both these compensation bases, how would system determine which of these compensation bases should be used for the employee? Now, this is determined based on the ranking that has been defined, right? So based on the ranking, now if you look at total compensation, the ranking is 4, right? Which is what shows here. It shows the ranking as 4, right? So every compensation basis you create, you'll associate it with a ranking, right? And then lower the ranking, the higher is the priority of that compensation basis. So in this case, you'll assign this a ranking of, let's say, 5 or 4 or 6 or whatever, and this you would assign a higher ranking, right? Now because 6, the number is lower, which means the priority of this ranking is higher. For India sales employees, system would assign them to the total cost to company compensation basis and not total target earnings. So lower the ranking, higher is the priority, right? Okay. Second thing, your ranking should be unique, right? Now, not all compensation bases that you create, you use it for representing your employees' compensation. Now, what do I mean by that? If I go to my next task, which I mentioned, which is maintain compensation basis. So if I come here, so if I come to maintain compensation basis, you see that these are the 3 delivered bases, right? But then apart from this, I have all these bases available, right? Okay. Now my total compensation has the ranking 4. If I change it to 3, I get an error saying compensation basis ranking must be unique, right? Let me come back. Okay, but then if you see, there are all these compensation bases. In fact, there are 34 compensation bases that are available, right? Now, ranking is not available for all these compensation bases. In fact, my ranking only starts from this row, which is total cost to company. Let me see if I can some highlighter. No. Okay. Now ranking is only available if you see for compensation basis starting here, right? So total cost to company has the ranking 1, and then uh, total pay China has 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, right? Now if I go back to my create configurable basis task, only if I select this checkbox, right, it asks me for a ranking. If I unselect this, no ranking is required. The same is the concept here. All those compensation basis wherein use to view compensation is selected as no, no ranking is required. Only for those compensation basis where use to view compensation is selected as yes, a ranking is required, right? Now, when we spoke about our percentage based allowance plans, we mentioned that compensation basis is used as for the purpose of your intermediate calculations, right, to calculate the value of your percentage based plans. So for these purposes you may create multiple compensation bases, but then they are not being used to represent an employee's total earnings, right? These are totals that you're creating to then use to calculate the value of your other percentage based plans. So all these compensation bases, you're not going to use them to represent employees earnings, right? So only those compensation bases, for example your total cost to company, your on target earnings, your total compensation, your total cost, those compensation bases in terms of which an employee's compensation would be represented or his on target earnings would be represented on his compensation tab, only those compensation basis you select this checkbox called use to view compensation, and then you would assign it a unique ranking, right? So there's already ranking till 5 assigned and I'm assigning it a unique ranking called 6, right? Any questions till this point? Okay. So if an employee is eligible for more than one compensation basis, right? Uh, System will use the one with highest ranking. So highest ranking is lowest number, right? Uh, to represent employees compensation, right? So if an employee is eligible for more than one basis, then the system uses the one with the highest ranking to show his compensation, right? Okay. Use to view compensation, the second thing we discussed. Select this checkbox if the compensation basis is used to represent employees compensation, right? uh, if the basis is used for calculate for intermediate calculations, then clear the checkbox, right? So if a basis is not used to represent an employee's total compensation, it is only used for your uh, intermediate calculations, for example to calculate the value of your period salary plans, uh, then you would use uh, uh, then you'll not select this checkbox which is used to view compensation. Okay, we'll talk about a number of other aspects on this compensation basis. So we'll talk about all these aspects, your manage basis total, right? We'll look at all of these in detail in our next chapter on compensation basis. Uh, Functional area. Now, as I mentioned, there are 4 functional areas. The functional area that we selected was compensation. right? But then there are other functional areas as well. So compensation is pretty straightforward. Basis to represent employees compensation, or for calculating uh, hey guys, sorry, give me a quick 1 minute. Okay, for or used for the purpose of calculating other plan values. Uh, so compensation, uh, your okay, I have not worked with other types. There's one type we'll talk about in brief, which is benefits. Uh, okay, so once I have defined the compensation basis, once I have defined the eligibility criteria for that basis, then I would have to include that basis in the compensation package. So if I go back to my compensation package, we have already discussed. So if I go to, let me go to edit compensation package, right? And select executive compensation package and do OK, right? So here I have the option to define grades. I have the option to define plans, so wherein I'll include all my plans. And then the third one is compensation basis, right? Right now, if you see, no basis has been included, even total compensation. Now, this is the basis which is shown for Steve Morgan, who's assigned to compensation package, right? Now, if I click on this prompt, if you see, I have this option called managed compensation basis, right? If I open this and look for total compensation, you see that total compensation is not in this list, right? Now, what is this managed compensation basis? A managed compensation basis is the one wherein this checkbox, which is managed compensation basis, is selected, right? Now the question is, what is this managed compensation basis? All right, now if I look at all these totals right now, right, which is total salary and allowances, total base pay, his total compensation. Now how is Workday deriving these totals? You add all your plans to the employee. For example, earlier these 5 plans were assigned, right? And system would add the value for those plans to then calculate these totals, right? When we added our new plan, which was this allowance plan, system automatically included that total as well, right? So this is basically I assign all the plans to the employee. When I say I, system would be defaulting, then manually I may be assigning a few on my own. But whatever is the case, this is basically a bottom up approach wherein you define all the plans for an employee. System checks which basis he's eligible for, right? Add the values of all those plans based on the configuration of that basis, and then shows the total for that basis, right? There is a completely different concept which is called an MBT, or your managed basis total. Now, what is this managed basis total? Your managed basis total is used for your cost to company India, right? Now, what is this managed basis total? Now, when you get your offer, right, or especially in India, uh, HR would tell you that your CTC is 10 lakh rupees, right? So HR or the organization is not defining or assigning to you those individual subcomponents, right? What they do is they only determine the value of your total cost to company, right? Then system would automatically allocate this overall 10 lakhs that has been assigned to you into different plans, right? So it will allocate an X amount to your basic salary, it will allocate Y amount to your HRA, again based on the calculations that have been set up, right? It allocates a certain amount to your PF based on that 12% calculation, right? You could be getting some fixed allowances. For example, let's say you get 5,000 rupees of uh, travel allowance per month. So system takes that overall number that has been assigned to you and then divides it or distributes it into all the individual components that you are eligible for, right? So this is a top down approach, right, wherein you define the value for your total cost to company and system allocates that value into all the underlying plans that are assigned to you or applicable to you, right? Okay, any questions till this point in time, and we'll talk about MBT in much more detail. All right, then let's look at the manage basis total. Just give me a quick second. Okay, sorry. So what is my non-managed basis total compensation basis? It is
Ali,
basically, yeah,
we are talking about primary compensation basis, right?
right. Mhm.
What is the use of that? Like defining one basis as a primary compensation basis?
As I mentioned, it is basically used to show the overall estimated earnings for an employee, right? So this employee, based on all the plans, all the targets that have been assigned to him, the bonus targets, the merit target, the overall estimated earnings for Steve Morgan is 502,000 or 200 US dollars, right?
Okay, because
Mhm.
because I've seen on request compensation page, it's asked for
Mhm.
primary compensation basis, like
Right.
enter primary compensation.
Right. Okay. So that is what I'm coming to now. So here for your normal employees, right? And if I go to the actions, and since you spoke about that request compensation change, if I go to request compensation change, right? And okay, if you see what is the primary compensation basis of the employee, it is total compensation. I don't have an option to edit it or update it, right? I cannot change it. Whatever changes I make to the individual components of the employee, let's say I give him a 10% increase, this increases his salary, and this in turn updates his primary compensation basis, right? So again, what is this? This is basically my bottom up approach, wherein I'm defining the value of all the plans to the employee. I may add a new plan, for example a new allowance plan, a new bonus plan, which let's say 10% bonus, right? And system automatically adds all those values to determine my primary compensation, right? But when I talk about MBT, your total cost to company, over there, you'll find that you'll have an option to edit the primary compensation basis as well. So here you will have an option to edit it, basically this pen icon. And again, so for my India employees, I'm saying his CTC is 10 lakhs and I enter 10 lakhs on the primary compensation basis, and then system would distribute those 10 lakhs into all the plans assigned to the employee, right? So that is the basic difference. Your normal compensation basis is bottom up, your MBT is top down, right? Okay, let me, what I'll do is this is total cost to company India. uh, let's hire an India employee, right? Edit compensation package. Mm, 1/1/2010 executive compensation package. Uh, okay, if you see again only your MBT, so your total cost to company India is not created as of 2010, 2020. Then okay, this is not created as an MBT. Let me edit this. Okay, so what I'm doing is I am selecting this checkbox which I'm calling as manage basis total, right? The moment I do that, system automatically highlights these other fields, right? Now here I'm saying salary plan maximum is, let's say, 60, right? So what I'm saying is whatever overall compensation or CTC is assigned to the employee, right? Because system automatically allocates the value of that CTC to all the different plans. But then when system is doing that allocation, a maximum of 60% can be allocated to your salary plan, right? So again, if I assign him 10 lakhs, maximum of 6 lakhs can be my salary, and remaining 4 lakhs should be other components. So let's say my PF, my mobile allowance, my special allowance, my travel telephone allowance, or anything, right? Or if I say 100, then this I'm not defining any limit as to how much can be allocated to my salary plan. System would automatically adjust this or allocate this based on the amount, and we'll see how this adjustment happens. Okay, so I am, again, this includes, let's say, all salary plans, this includes all allowance plans, uh, Okay, and I'll just say okay. So now I've converted this into manage basis total, right? I'm not going to create this one. Let me cancel this. Now if I come to manage basis total, I have total cost to company available as well. What I'll do is I'll make this change effective 2010, so that even for my previous hires, earlier because it was not an MBT, it was not showing up in that list. Now it is showing up, right? Okay, so what did I do? I have created or edited a compensation basis wherein I have included the salary plan, allowance plan, bonus plan, and commission plan, right? I have defined the eligibility criteria as all employees belonging to India, and I've selected this checkbox called manage basis total, and I'm saying system can do any allocation to the salary plan based on what it sees fit. Now what does it mean? We'll explore this when we hire an employee, and then I included that compensation basis into this compensation package, right? There's comp basis, and let's see if there is any employee who is eligible for this already. Global Modern Services. If we aren't able to find any employee, then okay, there are 4 employees or 4 positions. uh, okay, Bhavani Bhaskar, right? Let me open this employee. Let's look at her compensation. Okay, it is represented in terms of total cost to company India. Now if I go to compensation, request compensation change, I want to do that effective 1st of March. Is that I'm not able to. Is this because this employee is already okay? No issues. I would hire a new employee. Are there any empty positions? Okay, there's this empty position. Let me look at the higher definition. Start a background check, review. Do we have proposed compensation higher? No. Let me go ahead and edit the definition. Mm, a action, propose compensation, or comp partner. Let's assign this to compensation partner. Okay, let me go ahead and hire an employee here. This is based out of Hong Kong, but let's see. Edit tenant setup. Mm, okay, now we are all set. Hire employee. Okay, I want to hire her from Mumbai. Southern office, business site. Let's see what is the address. Okay, Mumbai. Right, so Mumbai effective March 1st. Employee type is regular, time type full time, and submit. Okay, propose compensation higher. Let me go ahead and open this. This is strange. Okay, guys, let's stop here. I'll have to see why it is not working. Probably will have to create a new compensation basis and not use this one. Okay, let me set up this example and we'll talk about this tomorrow, right? I want to show this with an example, else this will not make a lot of sense. Okay, so I'll set up a new compensation basis and then we'll see why it is not working. What I'm assuming is this should be, it shows total cost to company India, and I have converted total cost to company India to MBT. Okay, sure. Let's look at this tomorrow. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? If no, we can close for the day. All right. Thank you. I'll take that as a no. We'll connect again tomorrow, same time, 11 o'clock. Bye, guys. Take care.